Hi, my name is Heather, and today I'm going to share with you how I draw my children's book illustrations. I'm definitely not one of the best artists out there by any means, and my channel is really for me to teach you the technical things you need to know to be an artist. But that said, I've had so many people ask me how I draw my children's book illustrations, so in this video, I'm going to show you. I do want to also mention my favorite channels for learning how to illustrate. You can look through these and see which style speaks more to you and is similar to what you want for your own art, and just go nuts doing their tutorials, because these artists are way better than me and you'll learn so much more from them about drawing. My favorite way to illustrate for children's books is in Procreate on the iPad. And this costs just $12.99 with no subscriptions, which is an amazing price. The reason why I really like Procreate is because it's easy to use and it's fun to use. And I love drawing on the iPad because I can draw anywhere and I'm not tied to my computer like with a traditional tablet. New iPads are really expensive, so I got a refurbished iPad Pro first generation, the 9.7-inch, off of eBay for $260. This was the first version of iPad that worked with the Apple Pencil. I got the Apple Pencil new from Amazon because it was pretty much the same price as buying it used for some reason. One thing I want to mention before we get into it is that there is a drawback to using Procreate, but for me, it's not a deal breaker. And this is that Procreate is really bad at resizing and rotating. When you do either of those things, the artwork is going to end up blurry, whereas Photoshop does it perfectly with no issues. So I just try not to ever do that, or if I do have to, then I go back and touch up the artwork. Okay, let's get into it. I have my iPad and I have Procreate pulled up here. And when you start creating your artwork for your children's book, you're going to want to make sure that it's the proper size and color mode. I have videos explaining each of these things, which I will link to in the description. But what I like to do is 8.625 by 8.75 at 300 dpi for an 8.5 by 8.5 book, because I really like a square 8.5 by 8.5 book. And I just use the default RGB color mode. So I'm going to click the plus sign here to create a new canvas. And I'm going to click this little plus sign here. And I'm going to change the dimensions to inches. And for the width, I'm going to do 8.625. And for the height, I'm going to do 8.75. And then I have the DPI at 300. And for the color profile, I'll just keep it at display P3. And then I'll click create. The first thing that I always do is create my sketch. So I'm going to just pick a gray color. And I have a lot of pencils that I really like that I've bought from other artists, and I will list those in the description as well. But for this, I wanted to use the standard pencils that come with Procreate. So if you go to sketching, there's a lot of really good sketching pencils in here. And I really like Derwent for doing sketching. So let's use that one. And I like to make the brush as big as I can for the initial sketch because I don't want to be drawing too detailed. And I'm just going to sketch out what I want my scene to be. And normally I would actually have this already from the storyboard, because I would sketch out all the scenes first in a storyboard, and then I would just pull that one sketch into here. But for this tutorial, I'm going to also create the initial sketch here. I'm just going to make up a hypothetical scene. I actually want to do a book about a bee at some point, so I'm going to do a bee. Also, you always want to make sure that you have room for your text. If you're going to have text on the page, make sure you plan for that. Because if you have to try to fit in the text later, it's going to be really hard, and you might have to go back and make changes to your art so that you have space for the text. So let's say, for example, if we had text on this page, maybe we would have it up here. And then the other thing is, notice that I have the flower like in the center of the page, and I'm not putting it right against the edge like this. And that's because you always want to leave room for bleed. So the page is going to get cut off just a little bit along the edge, but if you have any important elements right along the edge like this, that's going to get cut off. And if you're using KDP to publish, it can even cause an error if you have things too close to the edge, like elements that are in your scene. So you want to be very mindful of that. Now this is okay because this is something that's continuing and going off the edge, and if it gets trimmed off, it's not going to change the design of the page at all. It could get trimmed off here, it could get trimmed off up here, and it's fine. And now I'm going to draw my little bee. I'm going to make him really excited about something, so he has his little hands up to his mouth because he's excited. This is what I'm going to have for my sketch. And if I go over here to the layers, then I can see that my sketch is on layer 1. So I can press the plus sign to add a new layer. And I'm going to bring that layer underneath layer 1. And I'll set the background color to whatever color I want for most of the background. So I'm going to do green because it's going to be grass all behind him. And then for my layer 2, I can start blocking in some of my colors. For that, I like to use a more solid pen. So you can go to inking and you can pick syrup. And that's a really good one for just filling in areas. The reason I like using this is because if you use one of the ones with texture, then you might end up with like little holes in it, and then the background will show through. So I'm going to use syrup, and then I'm just going to start drawing in my different shapes. And if you've never used Procreate before, basically you're just going to draw your shapes, and then once you have a closed area, you can grab the color and drag it over. And I used to have a lot of trouble with this because I would press and hold and try to drag, but that doesn't work because pressing and holding brings up the previous color. So you just have to do it kind of fast. You just kind of put your finger on and drag it. And then once you come to an area like this, where I want to draw this shape, but I don't want it to overlap the bee, and I don't want to have to go right against the edge of the bee and try to get a perfect edge there. So when it's something like that, and it really needs to be behind the bee, then I can just go to my layers and I'll just add a layer, and then I'll press and hold so I can drag it underneath the bee. And then I can make a full oval. And then as long as it connects, I can just drag the color in. So I'm going to add another layer and put it underneath the brown piece, and I'll do the flower. So I'll make this a little daisy. And I'll just continue that for the rest of the pieces here. You can also set your sketch layer to multiply if you're having a hard time seeing it. So you'll just click on your sketch layer, click the N, and then you're going to change it to multiply. And now you can see that your sketch looks a lot darker. Here's another really cool trick. So I want to do the black stripes over the bee, but if I try to do black stripes, then I'm going to have to make sure it lines up perfectly with the edge of his body. And so that's kind of annoying. So what I could do instead is I'm going to make a layer above the body of the bee. So I'm going to click on the bee body and click the plus sign. And then I'm going to click on it and set it to clipping mask. And now whenever I draw on the bee, it's just going to be constrained to whatever you have drawn on the layer below it. Now that I have all of my colors blocked out, I can go ahead and hide my sketch layer. So I'll just click that check mark to make it go away. And you might notice some little things here that need touch-ups too. Like right here, I have a hole, so I'll just fill that in. And you might also see that I'm selecting layers by just clicking on one of the layers, and then the possible layers come up in this little box and I can click on them. And that's just because I changed one of the settings. If you go up here to the settings and go to preferences, you can go to gesture controls, and right here we have touch. A finger touch will invoke layer select. So I have that on, and I really like that because I don't like having to go to the layers and find the one I want. I would rather just click and select it. And the other thing you might see me doing is just click and hold to select a color, and that's just one of the really cool features of Procreate that makes it really easy to draw. If you watch any beginner tutorials in Procreate, then they'll definitely have that as one of the first things that you'll learn. The next thing that I like to do is I like to add some texture around the edges of all of my shapes, because for children's books, I really like the colored pencil look with a lot of texture. So what I do for that is I'll just click on the layer that I want to work on, and then I'm going to change the brush to be one with some texture. So I'm going to go to sketching, and I would either use that same pencil we used for the sketching, Derwent, or another good one is Procreate pencil. And you can try each of these and see if you like it. So the Procreate pencil is very rough, and then the Derwent one is a little bit less rough. But it definitely has that nice like crayon kind of colored pencil look. So I'm going to use that one, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller too. And the texture will look different as you change the size of the brush. So like if you want it to be a little bit of a tighter texture, just make the brush a little smaller. And I'm just going to go right along all of these edges. You can also make your lines go a little bit outside of the edges of your shapes, and that will just give it even more of that hand-drawn look. It'll just make it look a little more like rough and messy. It's really up to you and what style you like for your artwork. I finished going around all of my edges. Here you can see where I have all of these rough edges here. So now I'm just going to add some shading. And to do that, I'm going to go to my layers panel, and I'm going to pick which layer I want to start the shading on. So let's say maybe the one with the bee body. And I'm going to click on the layer and turn alpha lock on. And this means that whenever I color, it's not going to go outside of the bee. It'll stay within that bee body that I drew. And now I'm just going to grab the same yellow that I did for the bee, and then I'll go up to the color here, and I'm going to make it a little bit darker for the shading. And I can also like change the color a little bit too, like if I want it to be maybe a little more orangey in the darker color. And then for my brush, I just use the same brush that I used to do the edges too. So I'll just use this Derwent. I usually use like pretty much only 2 brushes for the entire thing. And then I always make it bigger when I'm doing the shading. And then I can just go like right along the edge. And here you can see my shading here. And I do like to hold my brush like this actually, because then I can get like some nice smooth shading, but it still has that texture. But then the lines are good too, because the lines really make it look hand illustrated. And now I can go a little bit darker if I want to make it a little more dramatic. Then I can just kind of get some of these little edges here, like that, and maybe just like right along the very edge here. And maybe I'll do a little more texture just on the whole B here, just so that he isn't a flat color. So I'll add some of that lighter shading. And then I can also do some highlights. So if I grab that original yellow color, and then I'll just make it lighter, and then I can color some highlights here. And then I'll basically just continue that for the whole rest of the drawing. So my next layer I'm going to do is these stripes, and I'm going to click on it and turn alpha lock on. And then I can just color. I finished up adding texture to everything, but then I did realize that I was missing the wings. So I'm going to go to my layers, and underneath his body, I'm going to add a new layer, and then I'll just use white, and I'll draw his wings in. And then I want these to be kind of transparent, so I'm not going to fill them in. So I'm just going to like lightly color them in. And that way the background will show through. For the last thing, I would add a little bit of texture to the background. So if we go to the layers, then we can go down here and select the bottom layer and add a new layer and put that underneath the bottom layer. And we can just add any kind of texture here. And I'll go to the drawing brushes, and I'll just pick one of these because these are bigger than those other ones. I'm just going to use maybe some light green. And just kind of add some texture. And I'm going up and down for this one because of the grass. But of course, it depends on what your picture looks like. And then maybe I want to adjust these lighter grasses in the back. So I'm going to select that layer, and then I'll go up here and click on hue, saturation, and brightness. And I can maybe just make it a little darker. And then the last thing is, when I look at this leaf really doesn't stand out against the background. So I would want to do something to make it stand out. So I'm going to go to that leaf layer and maybe I'll just use like a brighter green, and I'll go back to that original Derwent brush. And even just some highlights can really make it stand out better. And then I think I'll add also some more shadows to it as well. So I'm going to get a darker green and then just go along the edge. And now my picture is done. So now I'm just going to export it, and then I can bring it into either Photoshop or Canva so that I can add the text to the page and finish up the layout and then export for KDP. And I have tutorials on all of that stuff, so definitely check out all my links that are going to be in the description. And then when I'm ready to save it out, I'm going to click the wrench icon and I'll go to PNG and I'll do save image. And this is a good idea because the JPEG compression in Procreate is really not wonderful. They don't give you options on the quality of the JPEG, so they compress it too much. So it really is better to save it out as a PNG in this instance. And then I have Google Photos, so it just automatically gets pulled into Google Photos. So from my computer, then I just go to Google Photos and I download it from there. Again, I'm not any kind of amazing artist, but I just wanted to make this video because I've gotten a lot of requests for it. So just think of it as your very, very, very beginner intro level to illustrating for children's books. And there's tons of other better tutorials out there that you can watch. And again, I'll have those all in the description for you as well. So have fun, and if you are illustrating your own children's book, join my creativity club on Facebook, where we encourage and support each other and help each other to reach our goals. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments, or as always, you can email me at heather@heathercash.com. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe so I know to make more videos like this. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.